Good evening. My name is Kent Wong. I'm the director of the UCLA Labor Center, and I would like to welcome you to another segment of Labor's Voice. This is a monthly program co-sponsored by the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor and the UCLA Labor Center to bring timely, current, critical information to working women and men here in Los Angeles and in other parts of the country. This has been an especially critical time during the pandemic for us to reach out to our union and community partners and friends to let them know of critical issues of the day. Tonight's segment will feature the recall and the fight for democracy. 12 days from today is Election Day here in the state of California, where the voters of California will determine whether Governor Gavin Newsom will continue to serve as our elected governor for the largest state in the nation, or whether a Republican instigated and Republican-backed recall measure will be successful on the ballot. So this is a critical issue for these next 12 days, and the future of California and the future of Californians depends on it. I want to lead off with a short video which provides you a little more information about the current mobilization to oppose the Republican recall.
With no hesitation, I'm proud to stand with my governor, Gavin Newsom. And I say no to the recall.
Governor Newsom had our backs. It's time that we had his back.
No matter where you come from, what you look like, what language you speak, or what your legal status is, this nation belongs to all of us.
That's why we will be in the streets day in and day out to say no on this recall.
This is driven by extremists and conspiracy theorists, people who don't believe in science, who are trying to roll back California's progress, everything that we have accomplished.
It is a Republican recall against labor. It's a Republican recall against health care. It's a Republican recall against our sisters and brothers who have put up the fight to make sure that there is progress in this state.
Are we gonna fight back? Are we gonna make sure everybody gets out to vote? Because I know when we get people out to vote, we win.
El mensaje es simple, no en el recall. Simple, no en el recall.
We got to stand together, brothers and sisters, as working people, shoulder to shoulder, to ensure that we continue to move a progressive California forward.
I'm proud to support Governor Gavin Newsom. Period. Period. Governor Gavin Newsom is California's governor, and we're damn proud of it.
We need a governor who's going to protect workers, because it's the workers who in fact are going to make sure that our community stays safe.
Let's remind Californians what we care about. We want clean air. We want child care. We want a living wage. We want to end homelessness. We do not want the Trump-like politics to somehow come here because they're upset that they couldn't elect a governor the fair way.
No on the recall! No on the recall! No on the recall!
Gavin Newsom stands with working families, and now we're standing with him. No on the recall.
Don't worry, Governor Newsom, we got you.
No, 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 no. Thank you very much.
I wanted to thank all of you for joining us tonight for Labor's Voice. Tonight, we are joined by Senator Elena Durazo, one of the warriors for working people in the state of California, who has done extraordinary work to advance the interests of workers and people throughout the state. Welcome, Maria Elena.
Thank you, Kent. Great to see you.
Great to see you. I just wanted to lead off by congratulating you on that historic breakthrough victory to secure healthcare access for undocumented seniors throughout the state of California. And this set a message for people throughout the country. So I just wanted to lead off by congratulating you and asking you, what is the significance of that piece of legislation?
Well, first of all, thank you, Kent, and thank you to the UCLA Labor Center for not only put on this program, but continuously connecting our young people with the labor movement. So it's extraordinary to think we've taken another big, huge step in providing healthcare for anybody, regardless of their status. And it started with now Commissioner Ricardo Lara, when he did the first breakthrough of covering low-income youth from 0 to 18 years of age. And then I picked up the baton and we took it from 18 to 26. And then this year it became the largest number, approximately 235,000 individuals, regardless of status, between the age of 50 and higher. And so just imagine a quarter million of people more. And these are men and women who either all worked and can no longer work because of their age or other issues, or continue to work because they didn't have health care. And we've heard stories after story after story of people who had to, do the recycling and do these other ways of getting a few more dollars in here, and just could never go get treatment unless it was emergency, which was far too late. So I'm very proud of the coalition, the Health for All, everybody who worked so hard. And that's the only way we win, right, Kent?
Absolutely. But it was a huge victory that had a national implication. So congratulations once again. The other significant victory I wanted to highlight is the building you see right behind us. And through your efforts, Maria Elena, we were able to secure $15 million to establish a permanent home for the UCLA Labor Center named in honor of Reverend James Lawson Jr. We were hoping to have the dedication this very weekend, but due to the pandemic restrictions, we're going to have to postpone that till a later time. But this victory is secure nevertheless. So once again, I wanted to acknowledge that big breakthrough. And if you could just comment on that, why was this a priority for you to move this piece of this member's request?
Well, Reverend Lawson, what his impact has been on labor, we'd like to think that sometimes his impact was only on the civil rights movement, not that that was anything small, but that somehow, make him appear to be more limited as far as his impact on the American people. And yes, it was his the fighting racism, fighting segregation, dismantling segregation. That was an extraordinary contribution that he, alongside Dr. King, made. But when he went to Memphis and when he was alongside the sanitation workers, it was a labor fight. It was a union fight. It was the way they all knew that the way for them to address the poverty that they were suffering, the dangerous conditions that they were suffering, was through a union. And so he was the key strategist. But all his life, he has taught that it was the labor movement that will bring economic justice. He reminds us, it's not the Chamber of Commerce that fought for Social Security, not the Chamber of Commerce that fought for Head Start, not the Chamber of Commerce that fought for civil rights. It was alongside the labor movement. And personally, when I became president of Unite Here, Hotel Workers Local 11, and since then, when I met him, he has guided me on what the philosophy and what the strategizing of a nonviolent labor movement can lead to. And so I'm personally very grateful to him. And I just want to make sure that his legacy in the labor movement is acknowledged as being essential to a social justice movement. So thank you for doing all that work, Kent, you and everybody at the Labor Center.
Well, thank you so much for securing that victory, which indeed will acknowledge for generations to come the legacy and the contributions of Reverend Lawson. And this is the first outreach center of its kind for UCLA, and it would be named the Lawson Worker Justice Center. So we appreciate your support. I do want to move on to the main topic of today's program, and that is 12 days from now is a very important election that will determine the future of California. So Maria Elena, in your view, what is at stake with regard to this Republican-backed recall of Governor Newsom?
Well, I was just on a statewide call with Latino leaders and what it has meant. And it was a good reminder that 26 years ago with Prop 187, that California was the first state to face a statewide ballot measure that was just pure and simple racist in its content, using immigrants as a scapegoat to get elected. And there was nothing uglier happening at the time. So we experienced it. We know what it's like to live in that world of racism. And so this, fast forward, and here we are with a candidate, the leading Republican candidate to try to replace Governor Newsom, as a guy named Larry Elder, who has said the worst, most violent things about immigrants and women and others to the right of Donald Trump, to the right of him. How could we go from having experienced Prop 187 and defeating that and all that it took for that? How could we then, and all the changes that we have made in the state, we are without a doubt ahead of the majority of states in this country. How can we go from Prop 187 to worse 26 years later? We cannot let that happen. He's talked about no minimum wage, leaving it up to the free market. He's talked about microchipping immigrants because it works on animals and dogs. I mean, there's, women don't deserve any of the rights that we have today. So it's pretty mind-boggling to think that anyone like that could actually be the leading candidate to replace someone who has responded. And we just talked about two examples, agreeing and signing the budget that would include undocumented immigrants, a budget that would include a building with the name of Reverend James Lawson, a budget that would include 200,000 more childcare slots for working men and women, a budget that would include more money for financial aid and grants for higher education, on our way towards universal pre-K. I mean, there's all the funding that's needed for not only the defensive fights with climate change like the wildfires, but trying to get ahead of it. In our programs for the formerly incarcerated, how to help those men and women get back on their feet and move forward. We could take criminal justice, our youth, mental health. Every aspect of everything in our lives is at stake. And some people want to pretend that, no, we're exaggerating, but we're not exaggerating. And we've been through it. And now, speaking of labor, not one of those Republican candidates would have signed a bill that would require employers to give the jobs back to hotel housekeepers and food service and stadiums. I mean, none of them would have signed that. None of them would have signed a bill to provide paid sick days to workers who lost their jobs because of the pandemic. Not a single one of them. So we have so much to be glad that we as a movement have won, as a labor movement have won. And now we can't risk that all with the recall.
Thank you, Maria Elena. You know, the theme tonight's program is the recall and the fight for democracy. How do you see this Republican-backed recall in relation to voter suppression and in relation to the attack on our basic democracy in this country?
Well, I'll give you an example. Just a few hours ago, we were voting on making sure that ballots will be sent by mail for elections from now on, to make that the law of California. And every single Republican voted against it. They voted against because they said that it was going to open up the gates to fraud, when in fact we're talking about opening up the gates and giving more people the rights that they should have, and that is the maximum participation in this country. And when we do that, we are in a much better position to win the things that we deserve, which is why the Republicans don't want our communities to vote. They don't want seniors to vote. They don't want youth to vote. They don't want communities of color to vote. They want to keep us out of the process. And that is very much at stake. And they use all this fake, violent language to scare people, and also to instigate more violence. So there's no doubt in my mind, all of that fake news is what led to the January 6th violent attempt to take over the Capitol. So we have to, this battle for democracy, this battle to keep on participating in our country's civic affairs is very, very much at stake. We saw what Trump dismantled, that we had fought for so much, everything he tried to dismantle. We saw what he did in the courts. They could do enormous amount of damage if the Republicans were to get into office in California and take that leadership position.
Maria Elena, I know you're on a tight time framework, but the last question is that prior to becoming a senator here in the state of California, you were also the leader, not only of the hotel workers, but of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. So in addressing the sisters and brothers of the labor movement, what would your message to them be during these next 12 critical days before Election Day?
Well, I would say, and I would remind us that the labor movement doesn't only represent those who are already members of the unions. The labor movement has always had this extraordinary legacy of fighting for all working men and women. And there are those that are privileged enough to have a union represent them. But there are millions more that do not have a union yet. And that we speak for them and that we fight for them. And they will then join us. They will support the labor movement. They will fight for the labor movement when we make those connections, when we organize non-union workers, invite everybody into the labor movement, invite and make sure they all understand this. When we say no to the recall, it's about everybody who's not only a union member, but everybody who's not yet a union member. So let's do what we do best. Let's talk to people. Let's have those one-on-one conversations. Let's have those tough conversations with people about the vaccinations. Let's talk to them. Let's talk to the people and not forget that that's the foundation of the labor movement. And just thank the labor movement for the battles that we engage in every single day. Gracias. Y gracias a todos los inmigrantes, gracias a todos los latinos. Somos el 40% de la población en California. Debemos de exigir lo que es justo y lo que es necesario para nuestras familias. Así es que todos son parte del mismo movimiento y que lucha por la gente.
Muchas gracias, Senator Maria Elena Durazo. Thank you for being our champion up in Sacramento and for all of the extraordinary work that you do. So I wish you all the best, and we hope that we'll be celebrating together 12 days.
Yes, that's right. We will be. God bless. Take care.
Thank you. Joining with us tonight are three extraordinary Los Angeles-based labor leaders. Ron Herrera, the president of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, representing 800,000 union members, and also a leader in the Teamsters Union, and he has been for many decades. Joining us is John Grant, the president of the United Food and Commercial Workers, Local 770, one of the largest private sector unions in the state of California, representing supermarkets, meatpacking, and cannabis workers, department store workers, many others. So John Grant is with us, and April Verrett, the president of the Service Employees International Union 2015, one of the largest unions indeed in the country, representing hundreds of thousands of long-term care workers, home care workers here in the state of California. All of these three are champions for working people and have advanced the interests of workers throughout the state of California. So Ron Herrera, if we could lead off with you, could you tell me what you think is at stake in the election coming up this September 14th?
In a couple of words, the labor movement, the entire labor movement's at stake right now. It's one of the reasons that at the Federation, we're, taking this extremely serious. My brother John and my sister April are on this Zoom, and I'm very honored that they are, because they're two of the leaders at the Federation that understood how important it was to fight back. And, we're in a couple of days away from Labor Day, and how symbolic would it be that, labor rise up, throughout the state, but especially in LA County, our region, our jurisdiction, what we are control of. I think it's extremely important to get a new governor, especially one like Larry Elder, is not even a consideration for us. We're definitely no on the recall. We want our governor kept in place. What other governor, at these times would have come through for labor, with COVID workplace protections like he did, through emergency paid leave and, securing funding for public schools and, on and on and on. But the progress that we've made is definitely in jeopardy. And, Elder has come out and even said, I believe, not verbatim, but he believes in zero minimum wage. We start at zero. I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And especially, with the three passionate leaders that you have on this call, it's unacceptable to us. And, we need to understand that workers contribute to this state. We are the backbone of this state. Senator Durazo said it best. It doesn't just stop with organized, union workers. It extends beyond that. And it's very important that, the three leaders on this call, with all our colleagues, right, with all our members, with, the community, reach out to one another and just beat this Republican recall down.
Thanks much, Brother Ron Herrera from the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. John Grant, the United Food and Commercial Workers has been at the forefront of fighting for essential workers, of fighting for health and safety protections in the face of corporate greed. What do you think a Republican governor would mean to worker rights in the state of California?
Simply put, it would mean more disease and death running through our communities. If you compare California to Florida, the protections that Governor Newsom mandated, from masks to social distancing to tracing to even testing, before he put this in place, employers were not reporting who was getting infected. There was no way to trace, and the pandemic just went out of control. All these protocols, masking, testing, tracing, extra vaccinations enabled us to, in fact, curb and limit the pandemic. We had untold, in our packing houses, up to 70% of the workers were infected until he stepped in. Through his leadership and OSHA, the highest fine in the country, again, packing house, came through his leadership in the Department of Labor on packing houses. Similarly, in grocery stores as well. They refused to even provide masks, to even allow their workers to have masks. And yet he pushed that forward. Who wants to take it away? The leading Republican candidate says there should be no mask mandates.
Absolutely. Larry Elder has pledged that his first 24 hours in office, he will bar any mask mandates for the state of California. That will result in more infection and more death. So when people talk about how this election is a life and death matter, it is no joke. And there are critical issues in many, many fields, in many, many areas and arenas that would be impacted.
There's one other one. So in the late 1970s, 1980s, supermarkets tried to lay off women of childbearing age, saying that we couldn't rely on them to do the work every day. We took them to court, won a multi-million-dollar, back in the 70s and 80s, judgment against them. What does Elder say, as Senator Durazo intimated? That laws against discrimination against women who are childbearing age should be abandoned, should be voided. This is what we fought for in the workplace, that men and women could work side by side, have the same rights. He wants to take that away. This is what's at stake. We have a leader, and we're basically electing our leader in this instance, who wants to be transformative, who not only recognizes and respects, but honors labor. It was the work of April's members. It was the work of all the members that run overseas. It was the grocery workers. It was meatpacking workers who kept our communities alive and thriving during the worst days of this pandemic. All of that work would be thrown asunder and would be put back into something worse than Florida.
Thank you, John. April Verrett with the Service Employees International Union, Local 2015, represents hundreds of thousands of home care workers. What do you think a Republican governor would mean for home care workers and for all public sector workers here in California?
It really makes me angry just to think that we are in this situation, and we have to, as a state, think about recall reform. So I just want to say that first and foremost. But the reality is that we, as home care workers, just saw the last vestiges of the last recall reversed under Governor Newsom. There were cuts that were implemented 18 years ago when Arnold Schwarzenegger became governor after the recall of Gray Davis that were finally, fully restored. 18 years of pain and suffering on that home care workers and people who depend on the in-home supportive services program has felt. Can you imagine carrying around a burden for 18 years and finally being able to put it to rest, only to have a threat of more cuts, hanging over your head? Just when we as a state, just passed one of the most transformational budgets in our history, where we saw our state legislature and our governor do amazing things with healthcare, with childcare, with education, for renters in our state. All of that is threatened. And yes, for public workers, it is a reality that there are some in this state who would want to get rid of collective bargaining for public workers altogether. It is a real threat that public workers could lose their right to a union, their right to organize, their right to bargain, if you get the wrong person in the governor's office. And so we have to be real about what is at stake in this upcoming election.
Thank you very much, April, for that insight with regard to the impact it would have on healthcare workers, home care workers, and public sector workers. Ron Herrera, you know, the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor has emerged as a real focal point of political action as well as democracy here in the state of California. And I want you to reflect on how you see this recall election as an attempt to undermine the popular will, as a way of undermining the very tenets of democracy.
Oh, just look at the funding. You look at the funding, where that funding's coming from millionaires that, you know, that want to roll back our protections. California, you know, obviously is one of the best states as far as workers go, but backers of the recall are also anti-union, special interests. You know, they're corporate funders, and they've dumped tens of millions of dollars attacking unions. The anti-union recall backers want to lower wages, you know, eliminate healthcare laws. And you've already heard about the minimum wage starting at you know, zero, kill union jobs. You know, this is just a sneak preview of the Republican agenda. But, you know, as far as the democracy goes, we had an election, and it hits to the core of our union values, since we're, you know, we epitomize what the democratic process is. But we anti-union, you know, special interests are trying to seize control of California. And, you know, I'm just glad that I have partners like my brother and sister on the Zoom call and yourself, Kent, that are not gonna accept it. We're gonna fight back. We are gonna live in a California that we are used to. We are gonna live in a California that respects workers, respects the right, you know, of hardworking Californians. And we are going to be staunch when it comes to securing the democratic process within our state.
Thanks so much, Ron. And, you know, unions are fighting for democracy on the job. They're the only organization that will fight for and protect worker rights on the job. And similarly, unions are also fighting for democracy in our broader society, that this is a clear threat to democratic principles when you can have a situation where someone could not even get 30% of the votes in the state of California and yet be elected governor. So this is a huge threat to our democracy. John, I wanted to get back to your point earlier about the pandemic and how Republican and Democratic governors have fundamentally changed the way that they have been managing during the pandemic. So what are your thoughts in terms of what a Republican governor might mean in terms of managing or mismanaging the pandemic?
Tens of thousands of more deaths is the simple answer. I mean, there's something, you know, we talked about, use the word transformational. Governor Newsom did two things I think that are so significant during the beginning stages. He called the California Grocers Association into a room with myself. It was a virtual room, but it was a room nonetheless, and said, something's got to be done to protect those workers who are exposed, not just those who are infected, and instituted and basically forced the employers to agree to a sector-wide, from the fields, through the warehouses, through the delivery, through the stores, the right that if you're exposed, you have the right to get paid 14 days away from work in order to recover and make sure. That, in fact, stopped much of the pandemic in its tracks. That would be thrown out. That recognition, that respect for workers. Who does the work that keeps this state going? You know, those workers, respecting them. You know, there's an expression, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And what Governor Newsom's respect for workers is, bring us all, union and non-union. Many of those you brought in were non-union, to the table, and what are their interests so we can protect them and enable our state to keep going. It is, as Ron said, and as well, it is voter suppression, what this is about. Someone with not even 30 can. If you have 18% of the vote, you can become the next governor. And the reason is because they want to deny us the constitutionally mandated way of elections and have a second chance. It's like the Dodgers win the World Series and the opposing team says, you know what? We didn't like what happened in the fourth inning, so we're going to redo the fourth inning alone. Forget the other 6 games. This is what this is about.
Thank you, John. April, I know that your union was at the forefront of the fight for 15, the fight for a $15 minimum wage that was won here in Los Angeles City, Los Angeles County, spread to the state of California, and is now being picked up across the country. Similarly, SEIU 2015 is now spearheading the call for a $20 minimum wage for home care workers. And I want you to tell us, why is this important and what this would mean for workers within this industry?
Absolutely, Kent. We are saying that it is time for 20 for all long-term care workers across the state of California. While we continue to advocate for a $15 minimum wage for all workers in this country, it actually kind of works very nicely. You got 20, you got 15, you put that together, you get 2015.
Oh.
Hey, but in all seriousness, long-term care workers, we have deemed them essential, right? When it works for us, right? When we want to put out feel-good statements as corporations and, have people, do photo ops and make us feel good about ourselves. But when it comes time to demonstrating how much we value workers, what we really care about in our state and in our society, it must be reflected in what people earn and the benefits that they receive. And we believe it is absolutely necessary that all long-term care workers in California make at least $20 an hour. These essential workers should no longer have to choose between doing this job that they love, that they are called to do, that now more than ever, we need more and more workers to do. 10,000 seniors turn 65 every single day in this country. We are not prepared to take care of the aging population in this state and in this country. There's a shortage of people who want to do this work. If we don't raise wages, if we don't improve benefits, we are going to be in a world of trouble. So we have to raise wages to meet the demand that is coming in the industry. And it's also the right thing to do. When you are of an age or you are in a situation that you need someone to care for you, you want the best person for the job, the best trained, the most committed, right? And that's what you get when you pay people what they're worth. And so, Ken, it is time for 20. And we're gonna get 20. We just recently launched our Los Angeles County contract campaign, and we're going to Alameda next. And these workers are on a path to 20.
That's very exciting, April. And I understand you had a powerful kickoff event last week with Reverend James Lawson Jr., and that this is a moral crusade that that each of you, April, John, Ron, you all represent essential workers. You all represent frontline workers who are so critical to the economy during the pandemic. And yet, many of these essential workers are treated as disposable workers and being paid poverty wages. And so it is so critical that the fight that you are leading, April, for $20 is going to shake up Los Angeles, it's going to shake up California and shake up the country. So congratulations and best wishes.
Thank you.
Ron, the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor has emerged as the most successful political mobilization program in the state of California, bar none. Even the Chamber of Commerce recognizes the strength of that. And the basic wisdom that, Miguel Contreras, the former head of the LA County Fed, said is that, when our communities turn out, we win. And when they don't, we lose. And under your leadership, Ron, you have been extraordinary at building the type of political machine and political operation that has mobilized communities like never before. So why do you think this issue of voter turnout is so decisive, and what needs to be done in the next 12 days?
It's simple math, but it's also, combating apathy, combating the Democrats that, or think that, well, let somebody else do it, we got this. That's our challenge. But what we've done is we're sticking to fundamentals. Kent, you're a student of, organize and mobilize. And we have to go back to that basic foundation, and that's what we're doing at the Federation. But, unfortunately, but fortunately, you have to have money. But when you have a family like I have on this call, and they're generous and they understand, the seriousness of this recall, they dig deep in their pockets. And, I have two of the top donors contributing to our PAC, the co-PAC, on the call. And all together, our siblings have raised $2 million to, do a LA County campaign. But alongside that money, we have to have volunteers. And my brother Hugo Romero, who's on staff at the Fed, knows that we have had 1,000 union members and paid staff come through the Federation already. It's incredible. We've already made 50,000 door knocks and 500,000 calls just out of the Federation. I mean, you drive by that building, on James Wood, and you would think, oh, no way. But, oh, yes. I've told the governor in a speech I did in El Sereno that LA County Labor is going to anchor the campaign and will be the foundation of, pushing back on this recall. And I really, really mean it, because it's time that labor step up. It's time that we put our differences aside and, join together as one. In coordination with our statewide partners, our goal is to put 25,000 volunteers statewide the last 4 days of the campaign. I can't say enough for my brothers and sisters who have come out and understand, the importance of this. And we welcome, everybody on this call. I hope you, visit, our website at thelafed.org and become a volunteer. We all have to go out. If you know 5 people, get them to vote. If you know 10, get them to vote. If you know 20, right? Every one of our family members should mail those ballots back, Kent. But we're taking this extremely serious.
That's a great challenge to get 25,000 people mobilized during this campaign will determine the outcome. I mean, when you have that force, when you have that many activists on the streets, that's what makes history. And the election, Los Angeles is going to be critical as the largest city in the state, as the largest concentration of voters in the state of California. The work of the Los Angeles labor movement is going to be decisive in ensuring a defeat of the recall election on September 14th. So, John, our last trip together, along with Brother Ron Herrera and Reverend James Lawson before the pandemic, was to Montgomery, Alabama, to meet with Brian Stevenson and the Equal Justice Initiative and to tour the Civil Rights Museum and Memorial. And it was really a powerful experience for us all and deepened our resolve, to join the fight for racial, economic, and gender justice and the relationship between those. And in reflecting on that experience together, John, I was wondering if you might talk about how it's changed your work and your union, especially with regard to racial justice and how we see this election as a real affront to racial justice.
And thanks, Kent. That's true. It was one of the highlights of my life, the trip to Montgomery. It really goes, it's not so much, or it's partial, I guess there's two things. This voter suppression is directed against Blacks, Indigenous, and people of color. But what's really behind it is they don't want them to vote because they don't like what they're going to vote for. And they're voting for transforming this state into one where this wages horrible inequity between those who work and those who own is in fact reduced. One thing that I think that has to be mentioned is many of our workers have been forced to work two or three part-time jobs because employers have pushed and pushed and pushed down. And so what's happened is they become tenants running and become hectic lives. The governor pushed forward this sort of tenant protection that enabled our members, and not just our members, but actually working people throughout the state to remain in their apartments, right? And because so what the voter suppression would be to deny workers, tenants, the right to get that. And I think what we've come to realize is you can't separate the workplace from the community, that those issues affect. Workers don't come home, they come home and they still have tenant rights to worry about. They still have police harassment to worry about. They still have climate change to worry about. Who is going to transform the state and protect it? Is that going to be suppressed or not? And that's, I think, what stood up. And one quick thing is, when we work around the question of change and people who made mistakes, we say that you should not be held by your worst mistake. You're all more than that. Well, frankly, Newsom is worth more than a stupid trip to a restaurant. If that's the basis between that and protecting our workers, having the right to stay in their homes, to be able to avoid death and disease from the pandemic, that's what they're trying to suppress. This has been resolved 3 years ago, and there's an election in less than a year. There was nothing that egregious that demands he be removed of office. Never broke one law. Never was any instance of corruption. That's what this is about, to deny democracy, to deny the regular constitutionally mandated democracy. That's what we have to stand up for.
Thank you very much, Brother John Grant. April, as someone who represents a union with a vast majority of women, a vast majority of women of color, SEIU 2015 has been at the forefront of advancing the fight for racial justice and gender justice. What is your sense in terms of how these critical issues are at stake during this election?
Yeah, just yesterday, Kent, it sickens me that just yesterday, our Supreme Court, refused to, push back on a state law that pushes women back decades, if not centuries, in respect to the right to make choices, to control what happens to our bodies, and the ban on abortions that is now law in Texas. And what we see happen and is happening to women is the attack on our rights. And what we just saw happen is the door is now open for Roe versus Wade to fall. Elections have consequences. And the reality is that this Trump Supreme Court is one that is going to be lost to us, lost to women for a generation. And so when you think about the fact that elections have those types of long-standing consequences, we cannot lose this recall, right? The damage that can be done at the hands of one ill-minded person, right, could really have vast, vast consequences in the lives of so many. The fact that we have a leading candidate who has the audacity as a man of color to say systemic racism isn't real, that it is a lie, right? It just makes me, again, sick to my stomach. And we as a state have to stand up. And we talk a lot about California values. It's time to demonstrate what those values are, and it's time to demonstrate them at the ballot box. And, I think John just said it so well, right? This is about our democracy. We see Republicans all over this country, dozens of states, have proposed laws that are meant to restrict the right of people who look like me from having the right, from exercising their right to vote. And we've seen this playbook before. I had the honor of speaking at the commemoration of the March on Washington, just this past Sunday. And it made me think about history and what history has taught us. It is the same racist Jim Crow playbook. When they cannot beat us in a fair fight, they cheat. Right? It's just like asking my great-grandfather how many bubbles was in a bar of soap, right? The types of laws that they are trying to enact. They cannot beat us in a fair fight in California, so they are trying to cheat. And I think we have to do a better job as a labor movement, as a movement of progressives and working people in California, to draw the lines of connection with what is happening in states like Georgia and Florida and Texas, because their fight is our fight, right? We in California, we got to get out of this bubble and know there is a national threat to our democracy, and we have to be a part of the fight to push that back. This Republican recall is a part of that national right-wing pushback on taking our democracy and using it for insidious things. And I know we're going to prevail in California. Let's end this crazy recall talk, and let's take our fight and our power to help our brothers and sisters in the states where they need us.
Thank you so much, April. And not only do I absolutely agree with your last comment, but I wanted to flag your earlier comment about the necessity of changing recall laws in the state of California that are inherently undemocratic. As our last question for each of you, we just wanted to allow you to put out a call to action, that we have 12 days to make history. We have 12 days to mobilize 25,000 people for the days leading up to this campaign to ensure victory on September 14th and a defeat of the recall. So let's start with you, Brother Ron Herrera. What's your call to action? What should people be doing for the next 12 days?
Put it all on the line. No excuses. Be part of the 25,000 volunteers the last 4 days of this recall election. Be strong. Look, no excuses. If you live out in the Valley, we have an office in San Fernando. We're, at the Fed, in Los Angeles. And if you live towards Long Beach, we have an office in Long Beach. So visit one of them. Call up our office, get involved, and let's get this recall behind us and move on to productive things that will help workers throughout this state.
Thank you very much, Brother Ron Herrera from the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor and the Teamsters. John Grant, what's your call to action? What should we be doing in the next 12 days?
We have to make history. The labor movement is about solidarity. That means standing shoulder to shoulder when anyone is being injured or on the threat of being injured. There's two things that I would suggest. Go to your kitchen table if you haven't done it yet. Pick up that ballot and mark it tonight. Don't delay that. Your vote is critically important. Get that ready and put it right next to the door so you take it off and you drop it off. And then find 3 other friends and walk precincts. This is about turnout. It's not about persuasion, really. You talk to people what it's about. We've got to get them out. We've got to make history and show and repulse them at the polls.
Thank you very much. John Grant, UFCW Local 770. April Verrett, what is your call to action? What do we need to do these next 12 days?
What we need to do, I'm not going to add to what my brother said about the recall. I'm going to underscore it. But what we need to do is we need to go and get vaccinated and protect ourselves and our democracy and our country from this pandemic that is still very, very much a threat to our way of life here in California and really all over the world. And if you are already vaccinated, I promise you know someone that isn't, and you have given up on them, go back and have another conversation. Don't stop talking to those of us who are not vaccinated, because we will not beat this thing until all of us get the shot in our arm.
Thank you so much, Sister April Verrett from SEIU 2015. So I just wanted to end by putting up on the screen ways that you can get involved for the last 12 days of the election. But I wanted to thank Brother Ron Herrera, Brother John Grant, Sister April Verrett. I also wanted to thank Hugo Romero, Chris Jang, and Sylvia Vasquez for helping with this program, Labor's Voice. And we hope that in these next 12 days, we can call on each and every one of you to get involved. So there's virtual events on No on the Recall virtual phone banks. There's door-to-door mobilization operations in Long Beach, in East and South LA, at the LA County Federation of Labor. So please be sure to take down this information, come out, join the 25,000 volunteers who will be making history in the next 12 days. Thanks very much, and we'll see you again for the next Labor's Voice.
Happy Labor Day.
Happy Labor Day.
Thank you.
Happy Labor Day. Thanks, Kent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brother John.
Thank
Sister
you.
April.
All right.